Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interaction between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTVC. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Barbara Holmes on the staff of St. John's United Methodist Church, hosting today's program on behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. Today's show is about women and their lives. It's about the choices they make, their careers, their families, and their faith. It's a very special show, and I'm very happy to introduce the guest to you today. This is Karen Johnson. Thank you for being here, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
This is Alan Bell Johnson, and those two Johnsons are not related, but Alan Bell, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Connie Yearwood, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very special people, and we're going to talk about some of the things you've done in your lives and some of the hopes that you have. And as I was getting ready for the show, I thought about the fact that in some ways we are representative of 4 generations. Karen, I would say you were a person very representative of the 90s, and then the prior generation I would be, and then perhaps you, Connie, and then Alan Bell. So we represent a wide spectrum of women and the kinds of things that happen in our lives. And so let's learn a little about each of you. Karen, are you an Austinite? How did you get to Austin?
Well, no, I'm not an Austinite. I'm from Dallas, and I came down to Austin in 1974 to go to the University of Texas, and I have been here ever since. So I feel like I'm kind of an Austinite.
You claim Austin is home,
right,
huh? Where'd you grow? Dallas was your home.
Right, yeah.
And Connie, how about you?
Not really Austinite. I was not born in Austin, born in Victoria, Texas. Austin was my father's home. But I have lived most of my life in Austin. So I consider Austin home.
So, well, you're almost a native Austinite.
Almost a native.
Now, Alan Bell, tell us a little bit about where you were born and the date when you were born.
I was born in near Yoakum, Texas, in the country, near Ezell, and April the 5th, 1889.
Now, I want you all to be sure to hear that she said 1889. That's 101.
101. On the 5th of April, I will be 101 years old.
She hasn't even rested up from all of the 100th birthday celebrations yet, and she's gone again on her 101st birthday. And this is typical of the spectacular guests that I have with me, and I want to, Alan Bell, you just really are an inspiration because of living independently, enjoying good health, being active in the community, serving others. So we're going to learn some more about that. And there's several things we want to talk about. Karen, you are a lawyer. When I said a representative of the 90s, I would say you are a wife, a mother, you have a career. Was there a lawyer in the family? How did you wind up choosing that as a career?
Well, I started out as a school teacher, and I taught school for 3 years, and then I was a legal secretary for 3 years. And during the time that I was a legal secretary, I got more and more interested in the law and decided that was a career that I would like to get into. And so after being out of school for 7 years, went back to law school.
Here?
No, in Houston. My husband and I moved to Houston. He was very supportive, and he just picked up right with me and went and taught. He's a school teacher also, and he taught school in Houston while I went to law school and fully supported me. And then when law school was over with, well, we came back to Austin, back to our old house, and picked up right where we left off 3 years before.
And you are practicing, you're in a firm, you're in state aid.
I work for the Railroad Commission. I'm a hearings examiner. And it's very enjoyable. I like it a lot.
So you're real pleased with that career choice?
Very much so. Very much so.
Well, now, Connie, I want to hear some about your career because you are a physician. You claim that you've been retired a number of years, but talk a little bit about that. How in the world did you be attracted to medicine in the first place, and then a little bit about where you went to school and how you practiced your profession?
I think our father was the one who gave us the incentive to become physicians, although he never would admit that he was. My sister and I both entered medical school at the same time. I think watching him, seeing the days that we came along, there were all of the home visits, physicians made home visits, and on certain occasions he would take his two little girls with him. It was sort of a joyride for us, and at the same time he was getting his work done. And watching him and becoming acquainted with his patients and so forth, I think that gave us the desire to become physicians. We, well, so far as school is concerned, the Austin Public School System and Samuel Houston College, the Houston part of Houston-Tolson College, my sister and I both graduated. Then we went to another institution, Methodist institution, Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee, and that's where we did our 4 years of medicine in Nashville.
Were you the only women in medical school at that time?
No, we were there were three of us. Started out as freshmen. We were the only three that were in the school of medicine at that time. But the young woman who started out with us as freshmen had to drop out because she was sort of the sole support of her mother. She was an only child, and her mother became ill, and so she never returned to medical school because of that. But we continued, and when we became sophomores, there were two other young women who came in as freshmen, so that kept us from feeling so alone so far as medical school goes.
Do you mind my asking what years that was? That seems to me mighty bold. I just would have not thought there were 6 or 8 women in the medical school.
Well, Joyce, that was my sister. Joyce and I entered medical school as classmates, freshman classmates, in 1929. It's quite a few years ago, you know. And we determined that that was what we wanted to do, and we were determined that we were going to complete medicine, in spite of the fact there were a few hardships the first year. But one thing that gave us a desire to continue was the fact that we had good cooperation from the young men in the class. They came to like us very much, and a rumor came out during the vacation period between the freshman and sophomore year, and they began writing us late in the summer saying they heard we weren't returning and so forth, and they were very unhappy about that. So they were delighted to see us when we returned during our
I imagine
sophomore
you were
year.
pretty popular.
Well, we were not, well, we were sort of regular, and we were not snobbish or squirmish about things, and we had the good attention of the young men from the friendly standpoint, particularly.
So you
we
graduated.
We graduated and did our internships. We took state board examination before we began our internships, so we took the Tennessee board since we had graduated there in Nashville, and the Tennessee board was being offered right there in Nashville at the Tennessee State Capitol, and we were lucky enough to become licensed in the state of Tennessee. When we got ready to come into Texas, then we had to get reciprocity with the state of Texas.
The board.
Didn't have to take the state board, but my sister, who determined that she was going to practice with her husband in the state of Connecticut, had to take the Connecticut board, and she successfully passed that.
So your paths parted then.
Our paths parted after our internships
But
that
she
was-
did go into practice in Connecticut.
in Connecticut. Yes.
And you came to Texas,
I
and
came
you
back to
chose
Texas.
public health.
Right.
And tell me the title for a number of years that you were the director.
Well, yes, I finally, after long, many years, I finally became the director of maternal and child health. That was the division in which I was assigned. And I persevered in there for many years as a woman, and which didn't give me too much trouble, but you're not totally appreciated in those years past. But we made it okay. And after the director went to another division by reorganization of the health department, I eventually became director of the division of maternal and child health after many years.
I hear behind what you're saying that there were some tough times along there, but
Yeah.
you're gracious enough to say that you persevered and you got through those tough times, and that's quite an accomplishment. I know when you retired it was a really significant event, and would want you to know how much we respect and appreciate that. I want to...
When I retired as chief of the Bureau of Personal Health Services, which was the first time that a female had been appointed as a bureau chief.
So you
I
had
was
many
the
firsts.
first female bureau chief in the Texas State Department of Health.
That's quite an accomplishment. Now, Alan Bell, you worked, you had some jobs, you set out on your own. Tell us about that. You went to grammar and high school,
Yes.
and then you taught kindergarten.
I thought I could not go to college, so my mother suggested that I start a little kindergarten. So we fixed up a place, and I had a little kindergarten, about 20 children.
Now,
And-
help us with the time. This would have been what year?
1909, and we put a table and some chairs, benches around the table for the children to sit on. It was a building that we could rent, and we did that. And then I had 20 children, and I taught kindergarten for 2 years, and I graduated those children into high school because we didn't have kindergarten. I went to kindergarten when I was a little child, but in a private home. And then I guess that's what reminded my mother for me to start one, because I went to one. And then I taught for 2 years, and I graduated those children into the public school when they were 7 years old. And then I got a job in the post office in the latter part of after school started in 1909. And then in 1910, September 1910, I was married. And my father and my husband said, now you are marrying, and it's time you quit that job and make a home for your husband. That's what they did in those days. That was 1910. So that's what I did, and we got us a cow and a garden, and I went to work. And I taught that, and finally we outgrew that, and the children came along, 2 children. I have a daughter and a son, and then we took care of those 2, and I still didn't work, only at home. And my husband died in 1940, and I kept house for my son then 14 years, and he married, and I was 65 years old, and I thought, well, they don't want me to live with them, and I don't want to live with them. So I went back to Galveston, where my son and I had first lived, and got a job in the post office, in the John Seeley Hospital, in the psychopathic ward, the trouble ward, women's ward. And the nurse said, well, we have 2 jobs vacant, one for the woman that pays 50 cents an hour, one for the man that pays 75 cents an hour. And I said, I tell you what you do. You give me the woman's job, with a man's pay. And she said, well, we can't do that because you women are going to need a man to help you with those other women someday, so we have to do that. So I worked there. I was 65 years old. That's my first job that paid anything after kindergarten. The post office. And so then when I moved to Palestine, where my sister was, and when I was 90 years old, my children said, now, Mother, it's time you were near one of us, and we want you to make up your mind where you go. You either go to Georgia or you come to Austin. Well, I was born and reared in Texas and always lived in Texas. And my daughter lived on the big lake. They had a lake home 8 miles from town. Well, I didn't want to live 8 miles from town, so I chose Austin. And I've been in Austin 9 years. And I've been living, I lived in Longmont, had an apartment in Longmont for 4 years, waited to get into the village Christian apartments.
Well, we're
And
glad
that's where I live now.
that you did choose to come to Austin, because you're quite an asset to the community, and we're pleased to have you here. Connie, when you were talking about the maternal and child
Health.
in the health department, you would be very interested in Karen's story. She has chosen to become a mother very intentionally, and the modern developments in medicine have made that possible. Some of the things that we've read about, you may have learned about as you were practicing, but Karen, tell us a little bit about your precious Emily and your pregnancy and birth.
Well, my precious Emily is now 11 months old. It seems like only yesterday, though. But my husband and I tried to have children for many, many years, and after we had been married for 10 years, we decided that I had had surgery, and we had gone through just about everything that is available, and we talked about adopting, and we decided that our last hope would be to try to go through in vitro fertilization. And so we went over to St. David's to Dr. Vaughn and went through that program. And we were one of the fortunate, I believe the success rate is 18%. We were very fortunate, and I became pregnant on the first try of in vitro fertilization. And so we feel like she is truly a miracle. And we're very blessed to have her.
And Karen, what are some observations you have about that for others thinking about adoption or starting a family? You seem to have a very successful medical, you seem to have no problems, and it worked beautifully for you?
It did work beautifully for me. I was told by the doctor who performed surgery on me 5 years ago that I was a real successful, a very good candidate for in vitro fertilization. But I would want to stress to people that the success rate is low. And I don't believe that it has really climbed much in the last couple of years, but it certainly was worth it to us, and we're definitely going to try it again.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, we are. It's also kind of an expensive procedure, and it's not covered by insurance, and you have to pay whether it works or not. But aside from all of that, we felt, of course, with our success, that it was very well worth it, and we're definitely going to try it again.
Oh, that's wonderful.
One thing that I did realize that I didn't know before I became a mother, when we were considering adoption, I wasn't real sure if I would be able, and I think probably everybody has this feeling, if they weren't sure that they would be able to love an adopted child the way they would their own. And now I know that it would be just as easy to love, a child that you adopted as it is to love your own, because after, just like I was always told, once you hold it in your arms and all, it's yours, and you love it very, very much. So
Especially
I'd be
if they're
very
young.
interested to see how that does work out, and the success you have had is really remarkable. That wouldn't have been possible 50 years
no,
ago.
well, it wasn't. It's just been, I believe it's about 10 years old. The oldest, they used to call them
Child.
test tube
Test tube
babies,
babies.
but anyway, I believe that the oldest one is now 10 years old. So that procedure is very new, very new. But like I said, it's truly a miracle.
Mhm.
And
It
we're
really-
very blessed.
It really is.
Well, each of you has spoken of transitions, times that there were tough decisions to make, and one of the things we wanted to talk about is what is it that gets you through these tough times? What are some of the things you look to? Of course, you look to your family for support, parents, husband, offspring, children. Connie, I believe I heard you say when we were visiting that you grew up in the church.
I did. I did.
I do too.
Well, I came, when you have two parents that are slightly religious, you know, maybe not so deeply so, but I think my mother was, and my father didn't have as much time to devote to it, but on Sundays that he could attend church, he did that, but there was always the excuse that home visits, remember, we did house calls at that time. But for one thing, if you didn't go to Sunday school, church school as we call it now, you didn't get to go play. You know, you didn't go visiting to play, and the kids couldn't come visit you to play. So you had to go to Sunday school. And we didn't have radio and television and all that to distract us. I suppose every place had Blue Law or something of the sort, because I don't remember any baseball, football, and all that sort of thing on Sunday afternoon. So the thing, the recreation that was provided for you, the socializing that was provided for you, was primarily church-based. So on Sunday afternoon, you went back to church for whatever little activity had been planned, and we thoroughly enjoyed it.
And to this day, you're still active in a church.
Oh yes, I am the first female chairman of the board of trustees of my church.
Another first. Oh, you're
Another
marvelous.
first. I'm not so sure that isn't a little bit of resentment. Too.
Oh, you will manage that just
my
fine.
members wouldn't enjoy my saying that, I don't imagine.
Well, now, Alan Bell, your life started out in the country. Your dad became a railroad man. Was church always a part of your life?
Yes, it was. I don't ever remember being out of church. My mother saw that we went to Sunday school and were there on time, and we took part in all of the activities, the children activities, and like Connie said, if you didn't go to church, you were out of everything, because that's where your social life was, your whole social. All of my life, that's been my largest social life.
And
in
it
the
is
church.
still.
And it is still. I still go to church. I work with the women, and I'm not as active as I was one time. I go and enjoy it and sit and listen
Well, we need to say
and talk a whole lot.
that you were in the crop walk last year, right around your 100th birthday.
I walked a mile and a half after I was 100 years old, and so this year it was a little cold, and I was trying to get over a crick in my neck, so I didn't walk this year. I'm going to walk next year, though.
And she still delivers Meals on Wheels, too. I think
I
that's
do,
really important to bring
yes.
out.
I deliver Meals on Wheels, and I pick up mail for some of the women that can't go into the mail room to get their mail delivered to them every day.
Well, and you're in
And
an
we
exercise group?
We also,
You're in an exercise group there?
and I'm in the aerobic exercise group 3 times a week.
And you haven't
I-
talked about the band.
And we have a Village Christian Kitchen Band. And I play the washboard, and we have a good time going back and forth. We go to the nursing homes once or twice. A year ago, we went 3 times a week. We were out 3 times a week to the nursing homes. And the different churches, some different churches call us for a performance, and we put on a performance. There was 12 women in this group 5 years ago, and there's 8 of us now, and 4 had to leave on account of their health. The same group of women, and we do real well for a bunch of women.
What she's not saying is that she sometimes dances a jig along with it. But Karen,
We have to keep up with the music.
you are active in a church also, Karen, and has that tied in with family and a career, and talk a little bit about that.
Yes, it has very much so. In fact, what Connie was talking about, how her social life revolved around the church. I'm right now trying to get a social group of people together who aren't members of the Sunday school class, just to have a social activity other than just going to church, to the church worship service. And I'm really looking forward to having that get together, and I hope that's a success.
Well, the time has just flown by. I could visit with you all evening, all day. It's been wonderful having you. And Karen, Alan Bell, Connie, thank you so much. It's been a special treat to have you here.
Thank you
can
for
see
having us.
that rapid changes and serious choices propel us toward the end of this century. The prospects are both frightful and hopeful, but our guests have spoken to the importance of a supportive, caring, faith community in their lives, and may the grace and love of our God be a part of your life also. Join us next week for another Austin Faith Dialogue. Good day.